Before we get into this episode, there's something that might be of interest that I wanted to tell you about. Scene and Heard, who run this podcast, have been asked by Scotland Food and Drink to undertake a strategic review of the Scotland Food and Drink Excellence Awards. Now, these Excellence Awards have been going for almost 20 years and are a huge mainstay of the food and drink sector. But it's time to ensure that they're still relevant. So if you have ever been involved in the Scotland Food and Drink Excellence Awards, or even if you've ever had an opinion about them, we would love for you, please, to complete our survey. So if you go to the On Farm Twitter, which is at @on_farm UK, and click the link in the bio, there will be a tab in there that will take you to the survey, and it should only take you a very short while to complete, but we would be enormously grateful.
The dogs are very friendly, but they're a bit insistent.
Well, we're fine with dogs. Hello, doggies. Hello. Hello. It's Monty here. This episode of On Farm is bound to be a good one because it has a terrier in it.
You're a cracker. You are a little cracker. Hey?
I met the terrier and its little friend in the home of farmer and best-selling crime writer James Oswald. This is the second of 2 episodes with James, so do go back and listen to last week's for the full story and picture.
You are a cracker. He's old now.
In this episode, we're getting the tour of James's home and farm, and a bit later we'll be outside and visiting some Highland cattle. But first, and I was really excited about this, we got the chance to nosy around James's study, where the writing magic happens.
But this is, so upstairs, this is what I think what the Americans would call a man cave.
A man cave. Ah. Oh my.
Which is, well, I put my desk at that end because if it was at this end I'd never do any writing. I'd just be looking at that view the whole time.
Yeah. And this is where it happens then?
Yeah. This is me working on book 13 at the moment, so
I'm actually impressed by your bookshelf as well. Well, as I would be, of course.
One of the great things about being a published author, or certainly being a best-selling published author, is you get sent an awful lot of proofs.
Yeah.
But one of the downsides of being an author writing 2 books a year and running a farm is you don't have a lot of time to read. So I've got a lot of books here which I haven't had time to read.
All the rankings.
Not quite
No,
all, quite
no.
a lot of.
Quite a lot of the rankings.
I haven't read the latest one yet.
Stuart McBride's.
A lot of Stuart McBride. Stuart's great at. I got doubled up because my mum had quite a lot of these as well.
Right.
So, yeah, he's quite good at doodling in them as well. So,
Where are your ones? Where's
mine are all on the bookcase there. These are all different editions behind here.
Can we?
Just move that out of the way slightly.
Do you know? I just seeing this. It makes me appreciate. It makes me realise again how much a fan of a book I am, as opposed to any Kindles or tablets or whatever. You know, I just think that's great
I have a
to see.
Kindle and I do use it. Quite often I get sent proofs electronically, but I much prefer a book, something you can hold. That's not quite everything because I don't have all of my foreign editions, but that's most of them.
Wow. I know you can't. I know you obviously can't see this, listeners. It's just quite cool to see. We're talking about these books. We're talking about the stories behind them. We're talking about how James went from farming to writing these books. It's just quite cool to see them. That's quite special.
That's how I always approach my writing as a problem-solving exercise. I come up with an idea, something happens. How does that happen? That background noise is the dog chewing on a bone, which they always do when new people come. They'll sit on the bed nearby and just noisily chew a bone.
We're in a crime writer's den and there's a dog chewing on a bone. I hope it's just an innocent dog bone thing.
Whose bone is it?
Oh, we're laughing at you.
Yeah, we are.
We are. Come on. Hey? Oh, my friend. Hello, doggies. Yes, my friend.
And I think,
yes, my friend.
think that pragmatic way of approaching things is that's how farmers deal, because you don't know what the day is going to throw at you. You just have to get on and deal with it.
Yeah, we were talking about that in one of the pods before. Again, it's like you with the book, which pod it was, but we were talking about that, and we never look at it as problems. It's just challenges. You know, what challenges do we face? But challenges are every day.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're going to face when you go outside.
And farmers are very good at it, because it's all manner of different challenges. It might be a broken tractor, it might be a cow in the wrong field, it might be a prolapse, it might be you don't know what. You have to have a very wide knowledge.
And you also have to have what's the word? It's not even about patience, but it's about tolerance of that's in the wrong field. You can't lose your shit for it. You know, you just got to deal with it.
I quietly go and kick a fence or something. But I mean, yesterday when I went up the hill to give the cows on the back of the hill their hay, and some helpful fellow had left a gate open, so they were all on the hill rather than on the next field on. So I was in the tractor, nobody else could hear, so I had a jolly good shouting session, and then I got out and moved them all back into the field they were meant to be in. That's what you do.
It is what you do.
I annoyingly can't put a lock on that gate because it's a footpath.
Shall we have a wander outside?
Shall we go and have a look at the cows?
Yeah. Cows and you talk about tractor. Was that not one of the pieces of PR from the early days that the first book paid for a new tractor or something like that?
It did indeed, yes. It's now 10 years old.
All right, we need another new one then.
I think another new book. I can afford a tractor. He was meant to be my sheepdog. He comes from a farm in Wales.
All right.
He's half Huntaway, and we thought he was half Huntaway, half collie. But I tried to train him, and completely useless. No, stay there. Stay. You stay.
We're going to have a look at some Highland cattle.
Yes. If we go up to the cattle shed.
Yep.
They are a commercial fold, technically speaking, but because my time is taken up so much with the books now, I don't have the numbers to make it that. I hesitate to say that I'm a hobby farmer because it's quite a big farm for a hobby farm, but they don't really make the money that they should do.
But you obviously must be passionate about them, because you could easily just say, I'm a best-selling author now, I ain't going to have time for cattle.
I don't know. I love being able to do both, because mind your feet. Yeah. When you're writing and you're away in your head and you get stuck on a problem, there's nothing actually better than to come out into the farm, go and do something. You could work with the cows, clear some gorse, mend some fences or whatever, and it just clears your head. And then when you sit back down at your desk, the problem's solved itself. So the two really complement each other well.
It's a brain clearing exercise.
It is indeed. And also, I mean, Highland cattle are just such magnificent beasts anyway. Yeah.
So we're in a cattle court. We're in the passageway up the middle of the cattle court, and there's some Highlanders off to our left-hand side that we're just going to have a wee look at. And I'll let James say what's in here, but it looks like, is it a bull, James? And
that's my bull.
Yeah.
That's Duke Booyer of Craigluscar. He came from the other side of Dunfermline. Okay. And 4 of his sons.
He's showing himself off now. He hears you speaking about him.
He's a very friendly chap,
right.
and the steers aren't quite so friendly. No. I do try to work with them, as some of them will come up and ask to be scratched, or give them a bit of a brush out in the field or whatever. But I think it's important to work with them as much as possible, and I'll go out and spend half an hour with them every day. We bring the bull into the shed just because he would normally be in the field just beyond here.
Yeah.
But it just gets so wet at this time of year. Yeah. They make a horrible mess of it.
Hello, my friend. Here he comes. He's showing himself off.
He's a good lad.
Yeah. Can you see me through that fringe?
I'm always surprised at how well they do see through all that hair. The only thing I always do when I'm approaching them is to talk to them before you get anywhere near them, because otherwise they're surprised and they turn around in a hurry, and then you get that horn in your midrib.
He's not bothered, he's just scratching his backside.
He's scratching his backside, yeah, exactly so.
So obviously, you're passionate about them, but as you say, it's never going to be the way to make the living. But what is the commercial angle to them? What do you do? Are you breeding pedigrees?
I breed. Well, the heifers I either keep as replacements or sell as pedigree heifers for breeding. We've got some hopefully going off next week. The steers, they all get castrated and their horns docked, and we finish them on farm basically, and they go off about 30 months, something between 30 months and a year, and 3 years, which is a long time. I mean, obviously commercial breeds would be going a lot sooner than that and would grow bigger. But we sent some off at the end of last year, got quite good money for them. I was quite pleased. There doesn't seem to be that much of a premium for Highland beef at them. Just occasionally there's a call goes round. We sent some a couple of years back, and they all ended up going to, I think it was Aldi.
Okay.
We're doing pure Highland beef burgers,
right.
And they also did pure Angus beef burgers and pure Hereford beef burgers or whatever. So they were doing the different breeds. So the call went out there, and they were paying a bit extra for purebred Highlands.
There's definitely there's a difference in it. There's a difference in the eating of Highland beef, in my experience anyway.
I would say, and I might be slightly biased here, that it is the best beef. But one of the mistakes that I made, because we have done occasionally box scheme stuff, and we had one slaughtered, and I asked them to hang it for 28 days.
Okay.
Because the received wisdom is the longer you hang it, the better it is. But actually the guy who was hanging it called us up after 3 weeks and said, come and have a look at it. Fortunately, it was just down the road. And he said, come and have a look, because I think we need to butcher this now. Because they've got so much fat on them, because they're grass-fed and slow growing, there was a worry that after another few days, the fat was going to start going rancid.
Right.
And so we had them butchered at the stuff cut at 21 days, and it was absolutely fine. Absolutely.
Because it's not just the fat that's kind of on the beef, is it? It's the marbling through as well.
Right through the beef.
It's a shame that's there's not a way that you could make more of it in a box scheme or whatever it might be. But it's difficult with the abattoir facilities and what have you.
It's finding places to do. I mean, we want to do more of it, and our neighbours want to do more of that. But and that they are looking for places. But it's you can find a butcher. There's plenty of butchers around here who for a fee will butcher a carcass for you, but the abattoirs won't hang them. So you've got to find somewhere to hang a carcass for 3 weeks. And that's the tricky thing.
But even getting an abattoir to kill them, even just
ABP in Perth will do private kills. Okay. But they won't. Once it's ready, you've got to come and take the carcass away.
Yeah, and
it costs money. Everything costs money. But these four, and there's four more up the hill. We just brought these four down to keep the bull company when the other ones went off before Christmas. These four will probably just go to either Scott Beef or ABP.
So he's done his work with the cows the back end of last year, and
we put them out through August through to the middle of September. So we should start calving middle of May.
Do you try and I don't know, take time off from writing to cover things like that, or do you just have to go with the flow?
They carve up on outdoors. Because we've only got, we haven't scanned them yet this year. That'll happen in the next couple of weeks. We'll scan them, so we'll know how many of them are in calf.
Yeah.
I suspect at least one of them who went to him last year isn't, because I saw a bulling the other day. But we'll probably have 14 or 15 in calf. You can tell if they're just about due. And I'll be going up to that field 3 or 4 times a day. But when I'm not up in that field, I can be sat on my desk writing. And what tends to not happen, as you can see if you look around the state of this shed, is all the little maintenance jobs which take forever to do.
It doesn't look any different from anyone else's shed, James.
Because we have terrible trouble with pigeons in here, and I started putting chicken wire around the beams to stop the pigeons, because they just crap in the feed face and everything. So that's why there's a scaffold tower there. That scaffold tower's been sitting there for about 6 months because I haven't had time to get up there and put the chicken wire around that one and then get it on to the next one. So that's the thing. And luckily I've got a good fencing guy, and I'm earning enough from the books that I can pay to get fencing done rather than fixing it myself, because otherwise it doesn't get done. And the gorse has got out of control a bit because A, we've got fewer sheep now. They used to keep it right down. And B, I don't have the time to get out there.
Did I, when we were walking past the other shed, did I spy some sort of gorse muncher or something?
Did you see a flail bot?
Is that what that is?
Bomford flail bot. Yeah, the head's not on it at the moment. The head's just gone off to be fixed because it's, but it's a remote-controlled flail machine, which I've got specifically for doing that.
So you can stand and just twiddle the thing. And
it is a superb machine when it's working, but it's what you need because the ground is so steep here and the gorse is so thick. That you can't do it with a tractor. If you try to do it with a chainsaw, I did clear a lot of it, just myself and a chainsaw, but I've killed my arms and my shoulders doing that. And you do that for sort of 2 months solid, and you've cleared maybe an acre. So it's hard work. But the flail bot's brilliant. But again, then it's one of these jobs that I can only do when I'm not on a deadline. And when the weather's right.
I might have to volunteer to come back up here and have a go with the flail bot. It looks like, literally you can sit on the ground and just let it.
You need to be reasonably close. The problem is, the reason it's gone off to be fixed is because the flail, the drum.
That's just the tractor part.
The flail head that goes on it. The drum's got slightly out of balance, so it rattles itself apart because I've hit a rock. So you need to be reasonably. You don't want to be so close that you're going to get hit by things, but you need to be close enough that you can see what it's doing.
Right.
But it's a noisy thing as well.
So it's not like you can sit writing books and let it go and do that.
That would be that. I think that'd be the next thing. You'll have sort of AI, GPS controlled, automatic, robotic.
Well, we do have that as an aside for our listeners. The work that we've done with Soil Essentials and the AgBot tractor, which will do, it'll do its job within a given area. But I'm not quite sure how it would cope on that slope with a flail and
that's definitely the edge case for robotic farming. But I wrote a novel, a rubbish science fiction novel that hasn't been published and probably never will be. I'm trying to think, probably about 15, 20 years ago, where there were robots going out doing all the farming work because I could see it coming then. And I think that's definitely, you see the guys out ploughing the fields. I think it's not long before they'll.
No, it's not. That literally that tractor that we helped Soil Essentials to demo last year, the AgBot, that is now on the market. They're on the continent. But one can, if you placed an order, the one would be brought over here, and you could have it on your farm.
There's a lot of work going on with the berry picking as well, isn't there? I think mostly pushed by the fact that they can't get the people in.
Yeah.
And the problem is once they've cracked the robots, then they won't need the people anymore, and that's another wage gone.
It's a shame when people are lost. It's a shame when there's not, when machinery replacing people, in my opinion, isn't always a good thing. But when there's no people to do the job.
Yeah. Well, this farm, but back in the 100 years ago, there would have been 25 men working on this farm, and in the winter when there was nothing better to do, they'd send them out with shovels to dig all the drainage ditches, which are now failing, and I'm having to dig up myself.
It's quite steep, the whole thing. What does it?
It goes up, and then there's a flat bit, and then it goes up, and then there's another flat bit.
Will that be 600 and 800, something like that, foot?
I've no idea. I'd have to look it up on a map.
But it's rising quite a short distance from the tee up.
Oh yeah, the top of Norman's Law is just shy of 300 meters?
Yeah.
900 feet, so 923 feet or something. We're about 90 meters here.
Right.
The farm does go up in steps. You look from here and it looks like you just get up to that steep bit and then you're in the woods. But actually the bulk of the farm is a relatively flat bit between the top of the gorse and the woods in the distance there.
Right. And so the other thing, we saw the flail bot in the shed there. We're with best-selling author James Oswald, so we're not just talking farming. And if you listen back to last week's episode, you'll hear us. We had a good chat about books, and I make no apologies for continuing on that theme a bit in this week's episode for this chat. We've been talking in the main, because I'm a fan of James's Tony McLean series. Is that the way to call it? Is it Tony McLean series? Yeah.
Tony McLean, Inspector McLean.
Inspector McLean series. And one of the things I noticed in the shed here on the farm is a Tony McLean Alfa Romeo.
Well, it's not his, it's mine.
It's yours.
My first car I ever bought when I just passed my driving test was an Alfa Romeo. Not because I was a fan then, it was just accidental. It was all I could afford. I then found out that it was going to cost as much to insure as it did to buy. Unfortunately, my dad helped me out with that. And it was a great car, but I was hooked since then. And I always wanted an Alfa Spider, the convertible. And I finally managed to buy myself one. It was an accident-damaged wreck. I bought it in 1991. So we're going a long way back now. And
the 1990s are 30 years ago. I keep telling myself that.
This is something that this is something I worked out when I wrote the last Tony McLean book. I thought I'll have something for the cold case unit to work on. That'll have happened 30 years ago. That'll be the 1970s.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's the 1990s. It's actually after I graduated from university. So I had a series of Alfa Romeos, and one of them I got the two-seater convertible, the Spider, as a wreck in 1990 with the idea that I was going to restore it and drive it around. It took me probably 20 years to get it back on the road, and now it sits in the shed. It's got one of these plastic car cocoon things to keep which is blowing air through it just to stop it from rusting and whatever. But it never goes anywhere because I don't have time. I also discovered that what I like most is tinkering with them,
right?
Fixing them, taking them apart, putting them back together again. Actually driving around in them, not so much.
Yeah, you're a typical farmer with a pickup truck at the back door, I see, as well.
Yeah.
Not as much fun.
No, but it's reliable.
That's what it needs to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But so I know. Well, again, it was another thing, just a little idiosyncratic thing to do when I was trying to create a character out of Tony McLean, and I just thought, well, he could have an old Alfa Romeo. Why not? Morse had a Jaguar.
So here's something that I thought I would ask in last week's episode. It never quite worked in, but how much of James Oswald is in Tony McLean?
I'd imagine quite a lot, but then there's quite a lot of all of my characters there in me because they've all come out of my head. Mm-hmm. When I was first sort of thinking through his character, rather than thinking, how would I react in this situation, I would say, well, how would my little brother react in this situation, or how would my friend Stuart react in this situation, and try and think about how other people would react, and then he becomes an amalgam of all these people, and then the more you write him, the more you get to know him, the more he becomes his own person. But there are definitely a lot of elements of me in him. I mean, he famously was sent off to a private school in England at an early age. Well, I was sent off to a private school in England at an early age, and it scarred me deeply, and I think it scarred him deeply. So that's me mining my own experience. But he's not me. I wouldn't mind having some of his money.
So is he a friend then? Is that what he is now?
I think he
is.
In
the way that you know him and the way you can write about him, is he a friend?
I think if I met him in real life, we'd get on fine. He might punch me for being rude to his girlfriend, or mean to his girlfriend, I should say, because she has a hard time in the books. But I mean, he's someone I would want to spend time with. But that's how he's meant to be in the books. He's meant to be someone that people like. Mrs. Cypher perhaps a little less so. And I can vent my frustrations. I was telling you earlier about the building of the house and how the firm that built most of the frame did a really bad job. If you read, I think it's the 5th book, Prayer for the Dead, there's some building contractors in that one.
Okay.
who turn out to be not very nice people and have a very sticky end. And there's a reason for that, because I was falling out with my builders at the time, and it's a very good way to vent your frustrations.
I hope, James, your builders are not listening to this, because didn't those builders in that book ram into a cliff on the side of the A9 in a BMW at 100 miles an hour or something like that?
Something along those lines. I might have been a little bit annoyed with them. But that's the great thing, you should be careful when you're talking to an author, because we will put you in a book and kill you.
Right. Producer Dave is nodding. I'll be the podcaster in the book. Producer Dave will meet an unsticky end.
We'll give this one a sympathetic edit, will we, Monty?
Yeah.
But that's one side of it. But also, when I'm out and about or doing the shopping or whatever, and I'm sort of listening on snippets of conversation. I think this is one of the reasons why a lot of authors write in cafes, because you can just listen to what other people are saying, not particularly being nosy. It's all grist to the mill, and observing how other people behave, and you watch the news and things, and you see how people react to things, and it all goes into creating more believable characters. And I mean, as an author, I think character is king. The plot comes out of character rather than the other way around. So the more realistic you can make your characters, the more compelling you'll make your plot.
So here's a question then that might be, kind of almost running counter to that realism. Tony McLean has got pots of money. I mean, I think it was family money or something. He's got pots of money, but he persists in his job, and he persists in being, why doesn't he just retire and come here and have some Highland cattle?
Well, he had a bit of a run-in with Highland cattle before, though. Yeah. I think, well, again, it's exploring sides of his character. You know from the second book that the tragedy of his life is that his fiancée was abducted and murdered, and so that's what drives him. He's not about the money; it's about solving the crimes and putting the bad guys away. Then it becomes about his obligations to the people around him. And that's kind of what drives him. So he has this very, very strong moral compass. Because he could, as you say, he could just jack it all in and say, I don't need to work. I don't need to deal with this rubbish. I can just go away. But he's not the sort of person who could leave it alone.
So did you purposely, I'm just interested, I'm curious, did you purposely sort of write that in? Was that a deliberate, to keep us interested and to keep it sort of this emphasis on him being driven? Did you keep? Is that why you put this kind of? I
think so, because he was always going to be the central character. I mean, when I wrote the first book, I didn't necessarily have in mind that he was going to come back for another 12 books after that and another 2 under contract. But I wanted him to be. I wanted to have him as a rounded a character as possible, and I just thought I looked at the other characters. Detective characters who were out there and the various tropes, and some of them were getting a bit hackneyed, the broken marriage and the alcohol problem and all this sort of stuff. And I thought I'm kind of pushing away from that, and I just thought it would be quite interesting if I made him rich. And I guess some of it goes back to also some of the earlier influences, like Agatha Christie and that sort of thing. And the old sort of gentleman sleuths of the 1920s and 30s or whatever. Yeah, that idea, like the Lord Peter Wimsey, for instance, who's aristocrat and very wealthy, but still, pursues criminals and puts himself in danger. And I kind of like that idea. I thought that would be more interesting, just because it's a bit different from what everybody else was doing. So it was the same really with the supernatural stuff. It was different from what everyone else was doing.
So how old is Tony now?
That I'm not entirely sure. In the same way that I don't really know what he looks like. I suspect he's probably about the same age as me, a little bit younger, maybe his early 50s. He's been detecting in these books, in a published form for 10 years now, so he's not exactly going to be 25. But
Just on the sort of, how old is he? When does he? Where does it go? Where does he go? Does he come and farm Highland cattle in Fife? Does he? What does he do?
I'm not sure yet. As I say, I'm writing book 13 at the moment. I have a contract for 3 more, so there'll be 14 in book 15, provided I'm still breathing. And where he goes from then, I'm not sure. But What I haven't done, which the thing that Ian Rankin did with Rebus, which was a book coming out each year, so he was a year older for each book, and it got to the point where he had to retire. My books they do come out initially they were coming out one every 6 months, but I don't really do that obvious progression of time. I never say it's this year or it's this year, and they're not focused on, I can't remember which one it was of Ian Rankin's, but it's focused on the G8 summit, and it happened at Glen Eagles, so you know exactly what year that was, and that places it. Whereas mine, there are a couple of things, like the latest one mentions the new hotel building at the St James Quarter with the unusual spire at the top of it, so you know it must happen after that was built, but I'm not saying it's 2000.
Did I see something on Twitter? Were you being a bit rude about it?
Possibly
Did I see that?
a little bit rude about it. I do think it is the most extraordinary piece of architecture, and I'm not entirely sure that I like it. So Tony doesn't like it either.
Tony doesn't like it, right? No, that wasn't quite what you were a bit more blunt about it.
I think I might
social
have.
Media.
I might have. Everybody in Edinburgh that I know calls it the Jobby, so nobody calls it the Walnut Whip except for the owners.
No, I'm just
the big tunnel at the bottom of the field that we used to lamb in that.
all right.
Because this shed isn't really suitable for lambing, and I didn't really fancy. Romneys are happy to lamb outdoors, but I didn't fancy it myself.
You're not.
And the big polytunnel was a great thing. I put a couple of CCTV cameras in there, and they're brilliant for lambing because they've got infrared. You don't need to have a light on in there. You can observe them in the dark. The last couple of years, I had one camera right in the middle of the thing, and it was a 360. It could zoom right into the corner. I mean, you could literally see the lamb coming out, and that was brilliant because it was just me and Barbara doing lambing, so she would do the early shift and the day shift, and I could sit at my computer. I could be writing until 2-3 o'clock in the morning. I've got the screen there, and every 10 minutes or so, just have a quick look around, anything happening, and if anything did look like it was happening, I just run on down to the polytunnel.
That's real. That just illustrates a bit more of what we're talking about and why we're here, because it is a complete diversification. There you are in your office, rattling off best-selling fiction with one eye on a lambing camera.
The funny is that when the books first took off, and I was interviewed by, I think it was the Telegraph, weirdly. They came up, we were doing the interview, they'd come up in late April, early May, we were still lambing, and I did say to them that we might have to abandon this interview at any minute, and I had the screen there, and they were asking me questions about the books, and I was just looking, so we're going to have to go down to the shed just now, the polytunnel just now. I grabbed on my plastic trousers and ran off down, and they followed me down, arriving just in time for me to get the second of the twins out and make sure it was all fine and everything. And it was brilliant because the interviewer couldn't have been happier. That was half of his column written. There's certainly the introduction to his column written. But that's it. The writing. There are ways to make space for the writing around the farming. And as I was saying earlier, how one of the problems with writing 2 books a year and doing the farming is I don't have much time to read, but I listen to a lot of audiobooks because if I'm out in the tractor, put my headphones in.
All of that, it just brings it home how farmers, you can do anything, diversifying into something that's selling your produce or whatever might be the more obvious way to go, or diversifying into something that, and I can't believe you haven't actually, takes advantage of this stunning view is tourism, agri-tourism in particular is another obvious way to go, but it doesn't have to be about that. It doesn't have to be about that.
One of the things that has proved quite popular, which I started doing when we had the first lockdown, because a lot of my friends online are writing people. They live in cities. They were stuck in flats or whatever. And I started taking little videos, short 2-minute videos of the cows. And then we had calving, and I was doing calving and the calves running around and stuff. And they were really, really popular. We post them up on Twitter, and every so often someone would say, you should do farm tours, you should do farm visits and stuff. And I said, I'm a recluse. The last thing I want is people coming here. I couldn't do that. It's not me. I'm a writer and a livestock farmer. We're both, reclusive pastimes.
But taking little videos and what have you, and opening up it's a different way of opening up the farm and letting people know, you've got this following through the writing. So being able to do that must be quite...
Well, it is fascinating how people do love Highland cows because they're just so photogenic anyway. Yeah. But hopefully people are learning. I get interesting questions from people about them. Every so often people say, what happens to them? And I have to say, well, they get turned into burgers. Yeah. And then I lose a couple of followers. But
it's life.
That's life, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think it's what I do. I think it is interesting, and I'd like to share it with people. I was worried when I first started doing the videos that I was going to get lynched, because obviously I had quite a good lockdown here. Yeah. Whereas other people were stuck in, and suddenly realised that the person that they were married to, and they'd only saw for a couple of hours a day.
Here comes another plot line. I'm sure.
I think most of those pandemic suddenly realising that you don't like your spouse plot lines have been done now. Yeah. But they're popular. So now the problem is if I forget to do one for a week, I start getting complaints.
Where's the video?
I haven't seen any cows recently.
Because I'm trying to write the books that you also love and that pay the bills. Yeah. So we've looked at lots of different diversifications on farm. We've from comedians, farmers that have diversified into stand-up comedy, to vodka. And now we've caught up with James Oswald, best-selling author, and it's been wonderful. And I hope you've enjoyed this episode. And if you missed last week's, if you would listen back to that too. I've had a fascinating chat with James. Thank you very much. As the podcast presenter and someone who's interested in diversification, it's been fantastic. But as a fan of certainly your Tony McLean series, massive fan, it's been wonderful to catch up with you.
Well, thank you very much for coming. It's been great fun.
I really enjoyed that. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this episode and last week's as much as I did recording them. Massive thanks again to on-farm sponsor Gillespie McAndrew, who make this series possible. They're a great bunch to work with, and they've even said that they'll help us to get more sponsorship on board. So if anyone out there wants to know about how you can help on farm, how you can support us, how you can maybe come on board as a sponsor, please do get in touch. On Farm is made by the team here at Scene&HerdPR and Marketing. And with that, that's it from me, and bye for now.